All right, we're going to go over food mechanics, market mechanics, and a really good design I just came up with. It is one of the best things I've ever designed in the game. It has a centralized granary, and it has market stall for that specific good in the center. Let's start with the tried and true. So berries. I want to talk about berries. This perk right here, forest management, doubles the capacity of all wild berries. This does absolutely nothing for you. It just doubles the capacity it can hold. A normal wild berry deposit has 11 procs at 40 berries. A rich berry deposit has 11 procs at 80 berries. Now there's a growing season. The cap on this is 64. I need to be able to harvest all of those berries before this procs and goes over 64, or I will not have the ability to get those berries. All that perk does is make it easier for you, but it's a useless perk, and what you should do is just have about 4 to 6 families, okay? An added benefit also of having multiple forager huts is that the pantry size here is 50. So when these get full, they can't bring berries in. So the more of these you have, the easier it is your logistics and your granary workers who have to rush to go get that stuff. So let's talk about fish. There are many different camps on fish. Personally, I prefer berries over fish, though with the right perks, you can actually get fish to be quite amazing. Now, instead of plagiarizing work that is actually superior to anything that I could give you, I am just going to reference Chilled Sloth's guide on fishing. He's broken down all of this. Essentially, the way that fish work is they replenish 50% for 3 months out of the year, March, April, and May, depending upon the size of your fish population at those replenishment points. So advanced pond keeping is incredibly beneficial here. Getting to the nitty gritty, with the advanced pond keeping perk and a rich deposit, you can get around 1,000, 1,100 fish per year. But keep in mind, fish have a high spoilage rate relative to berries. A rich deposit of berries, you can get 880 and a low spoilage rate, and you don't have to spend any perk points to get that. So those are where the two camps are. Check out Chilled Sloth's guide on fishing. It's very detailed, it's very accurate if you want to do that. Now, meat, on the other hand, with the right perks, if you go into trapping and advanced skinning, you can get a pretty good synergy going. You can get about 200 to 250 meat a year is what I'm seeing. It could be a little bit less or more than that based on what you're doing. Now, if you come down to a burgage plot and you're wondering, well, what about animal pens? Let's bring up an animal pen. Okay, so what you have here is gives a passive yield of 2 meat every 150 days. With goats, 1 meat and 1 hide every 150 days. So what that means is that you will generate 2 meat per year for goats, and you will generate something of around 4 meat every year for pig. Now, with the advanced skinning perk, it will double the amount produced in those pens, okay? So this animal pen, you will get 8 meat a year, and you will get 4 meat a year if you have that perk. Now, 8 meat a year is not bad, especially if you have nothing else going on in your slot. So yes, if you get the double meat perk, you get some of that, you put around, I'd say about 10 houses, all right? 10 houses is going to get you around 80 additional meat plus that. That's going to get you about 300 meat. And that's going to be more than enough for you to have 4 food types at 300. So if you want to dial in your meat, just do animal pens until you find yourself a nice little equilibrium. Another good thing about this is it's kind of like a little bit of a trickle effect and you get some meat coming in. So pigs are not useless. They just need to be used in the proper scenario. All right, so one thing I want to touch on is this game uses the Gregorian calendar per a lot of discussions. This has been almost confirmed, right? So there are 365 days in a year. These are yielding 150 days all the time. So essentially, about once every 6 years, you're actually going to have 3 yields. I don't include this in my calculation because it's not consistent. But if you're wondering, well, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? That's what's going on, depending upon when you place these things. Where we're going to be going over burgage plots, veggie farms, apples, and some other tips and tricks for food. I'm also going to be showing a design. So first and foremost, what do I mean by a corpse pit as a unit of measurement? What is a Morgan? We'll go over all that. Now, essentially, there is a system in this game with the fields, where it measures things in an old-timey field size thing called Morgans. And this is really actually a valuable way to look at things. If you take a corpse pit and you trace 2 of them, they equal 0.5 Morgans. Now, the game does round down. So one corpse pit could be 0.26, it could be 0.27 Morgans. This game rounds down. You just take 2 corpse pits, take your tool, there you go, field size 0.5 Morgans. Now just a quick refresher on what is a single and double burgage plot, because we will only, and I suggest that you only use double burgage plots for your farms, simply for efficiency. This is a single burgage plot. It has just a normal plot with a backyard extension. You can see there are 2 single burgage plots. Now, if you hit reduction here, you get a burgage plot with a +1. This is a double plot, and that's very important for food consumption and lots of other stuff that we can go into later. But what this means is this one plot will have 2 family. At tier 3, it will have 4 family, and that becomes more and more important as you go into these advanced designs. So most burgage plots are going to hit their peak efficiency at tier 3. Another important thing when placing plots is there is actually a grid system. For instance, if you wanted to do a square like so, as long as you have the orientation of it hitting the corners, it will work. However, if you were to slightly rotate that in a way that does not orientate with the corners, say like a diamond design like this, you will have issues with your plot not being able to connect. So you see here, it has huge issues. You can't get a perfect square. This is the bender. This is the best plot you can ever make. Put 6 corpse pits together like so. And then you outline them, and don't be afraid if it's just a little bit off or one side is a little bit off. It doesn't need to be perfect. Only the roads need to be straight for this to work correctly. They can also be just a little lopsided. And what you're going to do is you're going to delete the 3 of these in a bend. So they're basically bending around each other, thus the name bender. We're going to take our plot. We're going to bring it. So there's 2 ways to do this. The best way to do this is to take this plot into this corner and come all the way here to this point here and then put it here. This gets you one of the tightest curves in the game. You can see how much of this is curved right here. It's pretty beautiful. All right. So again, from here to this corner, right here, you can see that nice tight little corner. Then you delete the other corpse pits. Now that the area is defined, this corner here to the top corner here, and we get a nice, really thin area. So it's really important that you take it from this into the corner all the way up to the top part here and then down like so. And that will get you that awesome corner. So when they go and gather the crops, they walk from the house out, gather, walk back, and they keep going until they've gathered everything. So if you have long, skinny stuff, it's going to really suck, okay? That's why these things are amazing. You get 0.75 Morgans all within simple walking distance. Let's also talk about bread. So bread is something that people, I think, struggle with quite a bit. Now, in a normal map, what you should do when you come into a game is immediately look for where the emmer is and just start putting up your farm fields. Just start putting them up. So if you have your farm fields over here, this is really good. Now, there are 2 ways you can do this. You can either go the emmer route or you can go the rye route. And rye typically has a much bigger footprint and you usually get higher yields. So there are 2 ways you can do this. I typically always go for apples, but you can go into rye. Or if you really want to spend the points, you can go straight into bakeries. Bakeries allow you to produce twice as much bread from flour. So if you have a setup like this, I am just using the basic emmer, all right? 73, 41, 67, 93. This is around enough right here to create 400 bread. Very simple setup. I do have a bit of farmers, about 8. Each one of these is 1 Morgan. So I have 3 Morgan worth of grain growing, 9 fields in total, alternating 3 fields a year so that I have a good harvest. If I do too much of this in a row, I lose fertility. So you want to use crop rotation, but it is very easy. And then with the bread perk, you just come over to a house and you upgrade it into a bakery extension. Now the other route is to go into rye. You will just need more fields and workers doing that. You can literally make an argument for either or. Personally, I think that the double bakery tends to do a little bit better just by a hair, and it's going to be entirely situational, especially if you would prefer, if you're already going down to apples, to not spend that extra point and potentially put that point somewhere else, like coal production or anything else that you want to do. But for me, this is what I like to do. So they have not fixed honey yet. So even though the tooltip says that it can only support up to 2 apiaries, that is not the case. Every one of these apiaries is generating honey. You can see I have 141 honey and I just planted them. I just built these last year, okay? So honey is still very much broken. It is still very much worth getting if you have a lot of excess people. Because keep in mind, it is one of the worst returns, but late game, it's just really, it's just nice to have that extra food supply and it works really, really well. So yeah, don't be afraid. Now, eggs is 1 egg per burgage plot. Doesn't matter if it's single, doesn't matter if it's double. It's 1 egg per month per burgage plot. I have nothing against doing it, but I honestly, like, if I get another food type, then I have to get 2 more market stalls for that food type, or 1 market stall if I put it into the junk area, right? Sausages are cool. So what sausages do is they take 1 meat and 1 salt, and they make 2 sausages. If you have a rich deposit of salt, I would totally recommend that you do sausages. I do have the double wild animal. And if you go into policies and you get hunting grounds to increase the rate of growth there, it's worth it. But when you think about everything that you have to do, reduce, crops, double this, have multiple smokehouses, have all these backyard extensions for animals, it's really something you only need to do if you have no other choice. I personally think bread making is really powerful, and I like it a little bit more than sausages because I don't have to have salt coming in. I can do bread on any map. I can do it on a bad map. I can do it on a good map. So these are like all preferences, but I've told you enough about how that stuff works. You just need to get a butcher, start making meat, fill all your stuff with pig pens, go to your policy, do hunting grounds. But if you want to do that hunting grounds policy, you will have a very hard time. You will have a 50% loss in your crops, and that's pretty detrimental. So droughts, this is a new thing. If you go through a drought, it increases spoilage rates now. Now we need to talk about spoilage, and I'm very thankful for the community in Manor Lords. Chilled Sloth, who is very, very good at testing these mechanics, has opened my eyes to how spoilage works and has given me permission to share his data, which is very, very good, dialed in and tested. Now, I was mistaken in thinking that spoilage wasn't too big of a deal, because over time, as you can see, it is a big deal. Now, spoilage occurs at the beginning of every month. Now, with the new patch, market stalls no longer have any spoilage, so you can go down the rabbit hole of stocking market stalls with fish if you want to. But essentially, when you go from looking at it on a per month basis and you look at the compounded yearly spoilage rate, you lose quite a lot. So if you had 100 apples at the beginning of a year in a large granary, 39% of those will spoil. So when you're producing these quantities, you want to trade and sell them as fast as possible. As you can see here, fish, 58% of it will spoil if you have that from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. The per month basis and rates still apply. Sausage is 11%, meat 46%, veggies 39%, berries 39%, eggs 39%, honey 0%, honey OP, apples 39%, grain 22%, rye 39%, wheat 22%, flour 22%, bread 46%, barley 22%, malt 22%, ale 22%. So I practice something called overkill. A lot of the things that I'm telling you to do are to make your life easier so that you don't have to think about some of these things happening in the background. I want information to be simple and useful, but if you want more details, those details are there. All right, so the way that trade works is now currently a trader will go to a random trade post. Before, it used to be the closest, but the reason this is an issue is, say you have 2 trade posts. One has 5 apples, one has 45 apples. If it goes to the one with 5 apples, it just buys those 5 apples and takes off. So I have been using just a single trade post until they fix this. And per the dev, they are going to go further into trade in the next patch. But for now, I have found a lot of success in just having 1 trade post and focusing on 3 goods that I'm selling and purchasing barley to make ale, which is now currently working in the patch very, very well. I am purchasing 30 barley on average at any time. Now, eventually what I want to do is create a little boost town over here and trade my excess veggies and apples for barley and mitigate that more. But it is now possible, very possible, to keep a place super trashed, drunk. So now only granaries and storehouses can make market stalls. This change was made to eliminate confusion about which buildings and houses were responsible for supporting the market stall. So let's get into the key changes. Market stall improvements. You can now dial in exactly what goods you want stored in the market stalls of a specific market area. That's right, you can make multiple ones of them, and they can each have their own distinct rules. Another great thing is that the general interface now shows you if you have enough people. If it gets too red, it means you need more. If it's in the green, it means you're very, very good. Another thing is this overstock feature, which treats the market stall as if you have additional burgage plot. What this allows you to do is look at a bigger and brighter future where you can have regional specialization of goods. For example, in this plot over here, I am growing both veggies and apples. I have a granary that only stores veggies and apples. And I have a marketplace which only serves veggies and apples. Now keep in mind, in my other marketplace locations, I have disabled them serving these goods so that it doesn't cause confusion. Another phenomenal change is that the food variety bonus no longer requires exact amounts of food to achieve the 100% food variety bonus. You can see the highlighted foods in white now combine to meet the 4 food type requirements for each burgage plot, even if the quantities are limited. For instance, bread, honey, and fish are being combined together to meet the requirements for the 20 burgage plots for 2 food types, and veggies and apples for the other food type. You can see it says food types available 5 out of 4. So this calls to question, what strategies should I be using for market stall placement? Strategies for market stall placement. Regional food production tactics can reduce the number of market stalls that you need. I would break this up into 2 camps. The goods you can produce large quantities of, and the goods that you produce a little bit of. I'm looking at meat and I'm looking at eggs. So if you wanted to reduce the amount of market stalls you're using, you could create a specialized marketplace that only trades those goods. So I would only trade eggs and I would only trade meat. And I'd have 1 market stall like that per 20 burgage plots that I have. Now, if you want to set up a new market stall like that, go to your logistics tab, set it up like this, set this bad boy up, eggs and meat, and let's say sausages if we had that available in low quantities. And then we can take a food stall and simply relocate it there, and it will take on all the properties and continue to work from the nearest granary. So in this location, I could still store all of the good, but make sure, for instance, that I have a food stall dedicated to fish. So I don't want to sell honey here because I have an area over there dedicated to honey. So I'm going to X the honey. So the fish base, I can store all of the food groups in this area here, but I can make individual market stalls to account for the goods I'm producing a lot of, so that I can specify I want them to have their own market stall. And then everything else I can just throw into 1 market stall. This will reduce substantially the amount of market stalls you need for these abstract foods that you have little amounts of. It's probably the best strategy I can think of to have your cake and eat it too. For the other guys though, my recommendation is per 20 burgage plots you have 1 food stall per food type you're producing in mass. Over here I have a specialized region for honey and bread. So I have 1 food stall per type that I'm producing. And the same over here, veggies and apples, I have 1 food stall per 20 burgage plots for veggies and apples. This has created a very nice synergy. So this setup will minimize the amount of granary workers you need and maximize their efficiency. And of course, if you don't like this, you don't want to think this way, no problem. Just keep in mind you'll have to maybe use a couple more granary workers. At a low population, this is really negligible. But if you want to build a 1,000 pop city, these extra digits matter. So let me explain what some of this stuff means. So I've seen a lot of arguing about how mechanics work and food consumption and all of that. Let's talk about how resources are consumed and how that intermingles with the marketplace. All right, so currently clothing is actually not consumed. It's only reserved in a common goods stall. And what you need to focus on here is the big thing in white, supply and demand. Now, supply and demand mechanics are not the same as consumption mechanics. And so people get really confused. All this is saying is, hey, if you have these goods available at 100%, we're going to give you an approval bonus. This is simply a way to calculate the approval bonus so that you can attract and maintain people. How things are consumed is an entirely different mechanic. And hopefully they include this in the interface at some point. So clothing is reserved, it's not consumed. So simply just having clothing in a stall is what gives you that bonus. So every time someone moves in to a burgage plot, they need to have one clothing of each tier 1 and tier 2 reserved for them to get that 100% bonus. Now, firewood, on the other hand, which I have a specialized region over here in a market stall that only does coal and firewood. Firewood is consumed 1 per burgage plot per month. Now, food is the one that people get very confused about because they're like, well, why do I have to have all these food types? Again, That is just for the supply and demand bonus. How food is consumed is 1 unit per family, not per burgage plot. It's 1 per family. This has been tested to death. Example, 100 families, which is 300 pop, would need a food consumption of 1,200 units per year. Okay, 100 times 12 months. Now, what I do is I shoot for 5 food type. That has been my go-to. And the reason is because the more food types you have, the less of each food type you have to produce to hit that magic mark. So if you take 1,200 and you divide it by your food types that you're trying to achieve minus 5, you get 240 food. But what you have to factor in now is that there are spoilage mechanics. And while if you have a large granary, the per month spoilage is between 2 to 3%. When you compound that over time, it's between 22 and 33% for most goods, except for honey and except for sausage, which is like 11%. Honey is 0. And also, food stalls do not have spoilage at all. So fish and anything in your stalls won't spoil anymore. And you can see that just by highlighting. But taking into consideration spoilage, what I recommend you do is take that final figure I gave you, 240, and multiply it times an extremely conservative 30%. Also, if you have a drought, that will increase spoilage. This is called the no thinker, okay? You're most likely going to be creating things in excess. So what I'm getting at here and why you're needing to think this way, if I have 426 apples, right, and I am consuming only about 240 of those apples, I have 200 apples and 30% of them are going to spoil. It's about 60 apples. We're just doing, simple math here. They're going to spoil. So if you produce high quantities of food, you need to trade and sell them immediately because over time, the spoilage mechanic really wreaks havoc. But essentially, you'll take what food you need and you'll multiply it times 1.3, which is 130%. And that gets you to about 312. We could round that down to about 300. So as long as I can make 300 of each food type for 4 foods, I'm going to be good. The 5th food is just an even extra overkill. A lot of the things I do is that I really enjoy overkill. So what I'm showing you is just to make your life easier. It is one of the best things I've ever designed in the game. It has a centralized granary and it has market stall for that specific good in the center, the bender. Sorry, I mean the brawndo. The brawndo. It's got what plants crave. So how the do you build this thing? Well, let me show you. All right. So it uses the best unit of measurement in the game, a windmill for the final touches, and a corpse pit. So to build the brawndo, you are going to make a cross, 5 tiles high, 5 tiles across with a corpse pit. Now, people are having issues with things not lining up. Make sure that however you build this thing, that it lines up corner to corner with the corner of the map here, okay? It needs to line up with the corner of the map to get the snap points right. So if you're having issues with my designs, that's what you need to do to get them to work. All right, so we're gonna call this point right here dead center. We're gonna go 5 tiles across. We're gonna go 2 tiles up and 2 tiles down, okay? And then we're gonna just do a little bit of a T here. Little tea time, okay? Boom, 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 boom. Tea time. Just like this. And this is going to give you the perfect proportions. You are then going to take your road tool and go from this point to this point. From this point to this point. From this point to this point. Etc. and so forth. You're then going to remove the center tile. You're going to go to the farming tab and you're going to slap down a windmill. Now, please keep in mind, you want to do this while paused. You also need boards to do this. Windmill up. Now that I have the shape and everything, I'm going to delete all of the things that you see here. I am then going to connect each corner to each corner. Again, you do not need to do any thinking. It is just corner to corner. We're back in grade school. Then I'm going to use the windmill to create a circle. Make sure that your road connection point and your snap tools are all on. And what you're going to do is just baby it in just a little bit at a time, okay? Go a little bit. Little bit at a time. Until you get what you think is an acceptable, proud potentially patriotic circle. This is acceptable. Then we're going to do it one more time. This is to create the room that we need for the market stalls and the pack station for trade. And so you're going to trace it one more time. This is one of the nicest and easiest ways to get circles in the game. Boom. It's an acceptable circle. Hit the road tool, hold Alt to delete the original road. We're going to delete the original windmill after I use it as the center point for roads. We're going to put roads straight down the centers of each side. This is to create the benders within the brawndo. Boom. Now, you're asking yourself, couldn't you do this with a square? Couldn't you do this with XYZ? I had problems with it, and it wasn't until I used the circle here and I used this flat edge here that I was able to do this. Now, this took me a considerable amount of time to come up with, I'm not going to lie. All right, so there are 3 effective ways to do these plot points, and I'm going to show you some updated methods. So you can try going clockwise, which is like this, or you can try your first points going counterclockwise. So we're going to try clockwise first, bring it from this point to this point, all the way, tracing down to the 3rd point here, tracing to the corner here, and then lowering this. As you can see, that didn't work too well. So now we're going to try the other direction, and we're going to go clockwise, doing the same principle of taking it to these corner points like so. And you can see it still didn't do a good job. So what we want to do now is just move the 4th point 1 tile down, or 1 tile up, until we get it to snap like that. Now, it's not always going to be this great. Now, some people have had luck doing a corner trick like so, just taking a corner, then tracing to the 3rd point, and then tracing it out like that. This does seem to be the best method. And a special shout out to the Tank Thinker who showed me a video on how to do a better design here. Because this does seem to be pretty effective, that if you take it from corner to corner like so, it does seem to be pretty consistent. But to be honest, it's never going to be entirely consistent, in my opinion. This does seem to be the best way to do it, though. Take it from a corner and do a small point, and take it from corners like so. So you can see we're getting really, really good snap points doing this. But if that doesn't work, try the counterclockwise method. That's been pretty effective for me. But yeah, I will say that this, on average, the corner to corner, it's a lot like the bender too. The bender uses the same similar principle by using corners. You can see I got a nice tight area. So the area of buildable vegetation is right here with a hammer, and the houses are right here with good walking distance to all points on this property. So those are the 2 most effective methods, are using either the clock rotation or a corner to corner point. Now keep in mind, yeah, the corner to corner does seem to be better, but also keep in mind, you need to make sure that you are aligning with the map on how to do this. But hopefully that will give you a better grasp of how to create these awesome brawndo burgage plots. And if you don't want this to be immaculately perfect and you find something that's good enough, that's fine. Like this, it's not perfect, but it's really good. So we're going to do it. I actually probably would have spent the extra hour, but I want you guys to feel comfortable with, not being a psychopath, who has to have everything perfect. It is good. This is amazing. This is amazing right here. All right. And then what you're going to do is place a granary like so. Then you're going to come over to logistics and place a packing station. And then you're going to place in the logistics tab, you're going to place a marketplace in this space right here. Now, if you only need about 4 stalls, you're going to only have 2. Now, if you're really suave, you may sometimes even be able to line this up with wells. I was almost suave enough, but if you play without needing these wells, you can place a well in the center too. What you'll get in the end is a result like this. Now, keep in mind, apple trees take 5 years to reach maturity. You will actually now start getting apples about your 3rd and 4th year. Which is a change. Same with veggies. They take around 3 years for you to start hitting your max potential. You will need to upgrade all of these to tier 3 housing to have 4 families to efficiently gather from these plots. You will be able to gather from these plots without it, but it's not as efficient. Your people just quickly get out there and harvest with this and are very productive members of society and can actually do jobs with a setup like this. So what if the bender and the brawndo had a baby? Well, you would get the flexo. The flexo incorporates honey, apples, and veggies all into one design. You will need the beekeeping perk for this, and the tooltip here that says every region that can sustain 2 apiaries by default is wrong. It's 2 honey per day. Hopefully they update this soon. You need about 8 to 12 apiaries to get a decent amount. At 12 apiaries, you're going to be seeing something like 2 to 300 honey a year. Now keep in mind, honey does not have a spoilage rate. So as long as you're not consuming what you're making, it is going to grow, which makes it honestly a very good trade item too. Now the flexo is producing around 600 apples and 600 veggies per year. Coupled with the honey, this is an amazing feat of engineering, how to make the flexo. So make sure that you are aligning corner to corner your building. This flexo was made at an angle with crappy snap points, so you can still do it, but it did take me about 20 minutes when I did this incorrectly. Corner to corner. And what do I mean? Essentially just zoom out, take your mouse wheel, and just literally align it like this, and build in a straight line like such. And your snap points will be beautiful. This is consistent across all of my builds, and it's just how snap points work with larger plots. Okay, so this design calls for the greatest unit of measurement in the game, the corpse pit, or 0.25 Morgans. So we're going to pick a clean spot like such, and this is really easy. So start with 4 corpse pits, centered in the location you want everything to go. Once you have your 4 corpse pits up, you're simply just going to go dot to dot like such, and get yourself a square. Pause the game or they'll start building all these corpse pits. Slap down your granary however you wish. Make sure it's centered. Place a square around your granary. This is, like I said, relatively easy. And don't be afraid to use the little middle mouse button to contort things. I made it so that there's a bit of wiggle room in here. The important thing is to make sure that you do have the apiaries when you do this, so that you can get your roads right. You can always delete your roads, just set this up, and then delete your roads and replace everything too. So feel free just to stop literally right here with the granary and set up your roads however you want. But this is how you set up your apiaries. So we're going to have 2 of them side by side on each side. And then once that's done, you can see we have a clean and clear road right down the middle of them. This will allow the granary to get out to all of the other houses. I found it's beneficial to place the extra honey like so on the top part, and then run your roads right then. And that way everything else kind of contorts. So like right here, if I had lined it up with the well, or if you play with the option where you can put a well anywhere, it's beautiful. Unfortunately, there's no wells here. But what that gives me is a space for 2 pack stations. I can trade the honey, veggies, and apples for barley or any other kind. I can trade it for salt and meat. I can do whatever I want with it. That's why the pack stations are there. Pack stations go to the good you are trading wherever it is stored. So they have to come to the granary to get it. So if you put your pack station on the edge of a map, the donkey's walking back in town to your granary. So by placing your pack station right here, it gets the food, it takes off to the region, and then on the way back, it's supposed to drop it off in the nearest granary on the way back. Make sure you don't place your pack stations this way. All right, there you go. And so you can see you can fit 2 pack stations like that, but you have to make sure you place them long ways. And then over here, you can do ooh, wow. Yeah, you can get up to 9 market stalls. That is actually enough for the 3 food groups right there for 60 burgage plots. That is a beautiful thing. 60 burgage plots, 2 pack stations, 10 apiaries. Now, the fun part. This is so easy. All you're going to do is think in 2s once more. So we're going to go 2 up, 2 to the side, 2 to the right, 2 to the south, and then 1 in each direction for a total of 4, like so. Then connect the dots. Just like we did with the brawndo. Everything is pretty much spelled out for you on how to do this. You're always going to have little variances, but overall it's going to be the same theme. Then simply just delete everything. Okay, connect corner to corner, just like you do with the brawndo. Use the road tools that you have to connect straight. Now, if you wanted to, you could try to get these plots to work, but they are just so big. This is like, this is it's like 1.7, and it's really hard. What I've done is simply go sideways. This has the added benefit of giving a massive range of motion. Otherwise, people have to walk down and over. So now people have many entry points, which is logistically very sound. And then these inside plots are so easy. There's a couple of methods. I've been using something called a corner straddle. Now this gets you something that's decent enough, but not really grand, right? Or you can try what I'm calling a straddle. And that is where you do the points here and here, and then go corner to corner. Look how sharp that is. That is decently sharp. Now, if you want to play around with it, on the fourth point, sometimes you can get it sharper. You come in on the third point. This is really good. So just do a straddle like such, corner to corner point, and you can typically get an easy peasy strip that's very decent. Now, if you want to get crazy, and I know you do, you can sit and play around with it for quite some time until you get something a little bit sharper. Going corner to point or point to corner is one of the best ways to get good sharpness, but sometimes it doesn't work, so try alternating sides and just try everything that you possibly can. Sometimes you may even find it beneficial to lose a little bit of a corner to get a sharp. The object is you're just getting the best land you can, because the cleaner and shorter I can get this mark here, the more land is dedicated to veggies and apples. So because I've lined it up perfectly, I'm not having to spend 10 minutes per plot doing this. You can see how important that step is. And anyone who's having issues most likely has not fully addressed that. So corner to corner doesn't work, do a straddle. Straddle is great. And to be quite honest with you, this really is good enough. You're maybe losing 20 veggies or 20 apples, not having it even sharper than this. But with how much this thing puts out, it's really not that big of a deal. If you have problems like I do, then spend the extra 20 minutes, get something sharp like that. This is going to push you, like I said, into 600 veggies and 600 apples on average. You may actually have much more than that if you really dial in how sharp all this stuff is. But like I said, you don't need to. It's choose your own adventure. You can make this as easy or difficult as you want. This isn't bad. We're just going to take it to continue on. But you can see I'm able to just very quickly get all of these dialed in. With the third point, I'm going to bring it back a little bit. You can see by bringing the third point back on this side, I was able to get a little bit more of an edge. This isn't bad, but it's also not good. And then we can try a corner. It's really interesting to see how everything goes in. This is not a bad plot. So play to your heart's content. Do the flexo, and you will not regret it. Having honey production in the inside for the farmers, it's a great job for farmers. Great job for the whole family. Ages 8 and up, I guess. I don't know. I don't think the kids can work in there. Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. So this is it. That's how you make the flexo. It's a very big piece of equipment, but at the end it looks like this. You can alternate. You can do half and half. You can make it colorful. You can do whatever you want. And then when you get all your houses to tier 3, like we're trying to do here, it's going to look glorious. Since you're going to be at about 600, 600, and 600 honey, you should definitely be trading the honey. If you go to a high population, you're going to be consuming the majority of these veggies and apples, but the one granary, more than enough for what you're doing here. If you want, you can have a backup granary for additional honey, but the veggies, apples, and honey should all be sufficiently stored in just one large granary. Thank you guys so much for watching. Check out my perfect city build, which I will be linking at the end of this. I am editing every single episode down from like 1 hour to 20 to 30 minutes. Thank you guys so much for watching.